Good morning, everyone. My name is Simon Hamilton. I'm the Chief Executive of Belfast Chamber, and you're all very welcome to this morning's second in our series of Building Belfast Back Better events. The aim of these four events is to showcase some of the major infrastructure projects that are in the pipeline and will become a reality across Belfast in the next number of years. So we want to keep an eye on what we hope and what we know will be a positive future for our city, whilst understanding and acknowledging that it's a tough time for many at this moment, but we believe it's important to keep looking towards that undoubted brighter future that Belfast has. We are very, very pleased to be able to partner with our member and friends at Power NI, and we're joined this morning by Ian Fraser. Ian is the key account manager at Power NI, and Ian is going to say a few introductory words. Over to you, Ian. Thanks.
Thank you, Simon, and good morning, everyone. Power NI are delighted to be sponsoring the Building Belfast Back Better series of events. I am sure you will hear in this event, along with the others, sustainability as being a key theme and topic for discussion. So for those of you who are interested, please feel free to reach out to me to start a conversation as to how Power NI can supply you and your business with 100% sustainable renewable energy. My role within Power NI is that I am responsible for managing a wide range of clients across all sectors of the economy, and would welcome the opportunity to take this discussion further. Other than that, that's everything from me. So thank you very much for your time, and back to you, Simon.
Ian, thanks again for your attendance today and the support of Power NI for this series of events. It's very grateful that you're able to do that and you're able to support this series of events looking at the future of our city. So thank you for that. Today's event is focused on the Belfast Region City Deal, and it's something that I know that we've all heard about, we're all aware of, but perhaps if we're honest, maybe don't know all of the detail about. So to help us become experts in it, hopefully by the end of this morning, we have somebody who is an expert already, and that's Ashleen Feeney, partner at KPMG in Belfast. Ashleen has been involved in the Belfast Region City Deal, I think, really from the start. So if there's anybody who knows everything about the City Deal, it's Ashleen. So we're very, very pleased to have her with us this morning. At the end of Ashleen's presentation, we'll have an opportunity for you to put some questions to Ashleen, and also we're very, very lucky this morning to have Damien Martin, who is the Programme Director, works at Belfast City Council, the Programme Director for the City Deal. He will join us for that question and answer session at the end. So if anybody has any questions about anything that Ashleen has said or wants to put to Ashleen or to Damien and ask about the City Deal, please use the question and answer function, which should be at the bottom of your screen. So without anything more from me, over to Ashleen, over to you to take us through the Belfast Region City Deal. Thank you, Ashleen.
Thank you, Simon, and good morning, everyone. I am absolutely delighted to present to you all this morning, and I understand from Simon and his team there may be in excess of 250 of you who have joined us for this second webinar in the Belfast Chamber's Building Belfast Back Better series, which turns the spotlight from Ulster University's new enhanced campus being developed here in the city that you would have heard about last week, to another game-changing investment programme that I believe is fundamental to the future of the Northern Ireland economy, but also will help the city recover from the COVID crisis, and that is the Belfast Region City Deal, an ambitious 10-year integrated investment programme, and it will also be the first such deal in Northern Ireland to secure funding under the UK government's City and Growth Deal initiative, which has been in existence now, believe it or not, for more than a decade. Many of the businesses across the city, many of you here with us this morning, particularly in the retail and hospitality sectors, have been hit very hard by the impact of COVID. And I really commend the Chamber for doing this webinar series and injected much needed notes of optimism from showcasing some of the significant investment opportunities currently being taken forward across the city that will assist to attract more people into the city in terms of new visitors, people coming to work and live in the city, but also people back into the city that have retreated since the start of lockdown last year, and ultimately contribute to the realisation of the Belfast agenda and also help bring prosperity to all. No child, no citizen left behind. Some of the enduring shifts trends from the pandemic have accelerated the reimagining of city centres and high streets. And we now must look how best to support our independent retail sector and also attract back international tourists in the new reality that lies ahead. Also worthy of note is that the pandemic has also led to a rise in the regional cities like Belfast over the larger cities like London, actually becoming more attractive for people as they seek to settle going forward. And that should bode well for Belfast in terms of a lot of our diaspora that have gone away to London, New York and beyond. That is, when lockdown hit, some of them retreated back to their home places. And they've now realised that the quality of life that we have here in Belfast in Northern Ireland is actually not bad after all. And that actually they may seek now to actually stay here long term, which is fantastic. So before I provide you with a deep insight into the Belfast Region City Deal, let me just quickly provide you with a little background to KPMG's connection to the UK City Deals initiative. Back in 2006, when the whole UK City Deal initiative was first mooted by the then government, my colleagues in London and Scotland were heavily involved in the very first transformational city deals, most notably Greater Manchester. And then following that, the first city deal in one of the devolved regions in Scotland, that being the Glasgow City Deal. And with that experience, combined with the local team here in KPMG in Belfast, we then sought to explore the opportunities with Belfast City Council in terms of bringing a city deal to Belfast, Northern Ireland. So over the course of the next 15 or so minutes, I am going to take you through, first of all, what is the potential prize? We may all have often heard people talk about, yes, Belfast Region City Deal is a big deal. So I think it's important that I articulate what is the prize, why has all this effort and time gone into actually shaping the great proposition that the Belfast Region City Deal now is. But before providing you insights on that, I think it's important that I demystify what UK city deals are in terms of actually what they seek to achieve and why many local government authorities have been successful in getting that additional funding, particularly in the devolved regions, that is actually over and above our traditional Barnett consequentials. And then I will then take you through the detail of the Belfast City Deal and the ambitious programme and the various different investment pillars. And then, as Simon has said, at the end of the presentation, Damien Martin, the Belfast Region City Deal Programme Director, who I know will be absolutely delighted to answer some of your questions along with myself. So then in terms of the potential prize, many people automatically point to, is this additional funding? And indeed, yes, there is additional funding for the Belfast region, and that is the 350 million of additional funding that was announced by the UK Chancellor back in October 2018. But that is not the ultimate prize. The ultimate prize is so much more. It's not just about more jobs, but high quality, better jobs. And it's also about inclusive growth, the point I made about no one being left behind. And it's also about leveraging private investment. We all know the Exchequer cannot fund all of our future aspirations and ambitions. And indeed, I would add that in terms of those city deals that we have previously worked on in KPMG, particularly Greater Manchester and Glasgow, they have shown the potential, and particularly Greater Manchester actually has, to leverage £3 to £4 of private sector investment for every pound of Exchequer funding into the deal programme, and then also drive increased productivity. That is so, so important. So you may ask, how are we going to drive the creation of more and better jobs? So we'll do that through developing capability in our strong business clusters here in Belfast and across Northern Ireland, such as health and life sciences, digital and creative, fintech, clean tech, and advanced manufacturing, to continually innovate and develop new services and products that can be exported right across the globe. We are in a global marketplace. Also, building our digital capability through the deployment of 5G and wireless test beds and the creation of challenge funds to help our small businesses, because we know that small businesses, SMEs, are the backbone of the Northern Ireland economy. And to help those small businesses test and develop new ideas which could make us global leaders, because those small businesses don't have access to the capital or the facilities to do that. And indeed, invest in the creation of sustainable year-round tourism products that will stand out in those international markets and breathe new light into our city and indeed town centres. We all want the visitors to come back, but we want them to stay longer. Also, in terms of effective economic and social infrastructure, because we all know we are constantly faced with affordability and funding constraints, and therefore it's absolutely vital that we take forward an optimum mix of projects that will sufficiently shift the economic dial and also address the challenges of ensuring our growth is not just sustainable, but it is inclusive. And that is connecting all people to jobs, for example, through transport projects. So then in terms, if I take you through what is a city deal? Well, it's a contract. It's a contract between the UK government and, in the case of the devolved region, our local devolved government, and then local government and other city deal partners, particularly the universities, which we'll hear more about in a moment. Because no funding flows from government until deal documentation, signed legal contracts have been executed. And the documentation I'm talking about is funding agreements, assurance and monitoring frameworks, and more importantly, how that proposed programme of investment is going to be delivered, rolled out. Documents ultimately affirm the joint agreement of all the deal partners to achieve the full, and it has to be the full, implementation of the deal. And you'll see there Greater Manchester that I alluded to, which was the first one signed back in 2009 and involved 10 local authorities coming together to deliver that ambitious programme. And indeed, it's been so successful that they are now on the 4th generation of their City Deal programme. I'm sure some of you that have been in Manchester over the years have seen the true transformation that has happened to that city, and it would be fantastic if we could deliver some of that here in Belfast. Also, Glasgow, 7 local authorities again coming together. That was the first deal in a devolved region signed back in 2014. And then indeed Cardiff, where 10 local authorities came together and was the first deal signed in Wales back in 2016. And then Tay Cities, which was the most recent deal that was just signed before Christmas passed as well. So in terms of the UK city deals, what must they do to unlock that funding from government? Well, they're heavily focused on productivity and inclusive growth. Really, really important. They also assist bring together economic, social, and sustainability goals, because there's a different approach taken to actually identifying what that optimum programme of investment is. So projects are not taken forward in isolation. It's looking at the programme level, the combined impact of all of those projects to maximise the economic impact and indeed ensure that that economic growth is inclusive. They also encourage local leadership and good governance to ensure delivery. That's something that's so, so important. We all know too well in terms of our track record sometimes in Northern Ireland is not the best in terms of delivery. Projects get delayed, or they don't happen, or they go wrong. And then ultimately, with all of that in place, you can unlock that innovative financing and funding, and particularly involve the private sector in terms of partnerships with them. So there is a great opportunity. In terms of the city deals to date, there's over 40 city deals signed already in England, Scotland and Wales. And in terms of Northern Ireland, some of you may be aware, there have been 4 city region and growth deals announced to date. None of them have been signed, no funding has flowed. But particularly Belfast was certainly the first deal that was announced by the Chancellor, as I said, back in October 2018. But there's real ambition and momentum now in terms of the progress made in working up the projects that underpin the investment programme, and that deal will be agreed this calendar year, which I think is fantastic for the city and very much what we need. So before I get into the detail on the Belfast Region City Deal, I did want to give you a quick overview of a couple of the other deals in the devolved region, because none of the city deals are the same. There is not a standard programme of investment. They are all bespoke, really, really important, because that's why you want that local-led city deal, because they understand the barriers to growth locally, what is actually holding back the growth of that city and its surrounding region. So the first one at a glance was the Glasgow Region City Deal that we worked on, and there was an overall deal fund size in excess of £1 billion, covering a population of 1.7 million. And that deal, the funding in terms of that deal, was going to flow over a 30-year period. And you may ask, that's a really long time. You know, what does that really amount to in terms of each year? However, in terms of that deal involved a lot of actually skin in the game, risk capital by the local authorities. You will see there 130 million, where they actually had to go forward with their projects. And then there would be interim reviews of those projects in terms of their actual impact on the local economy and ultimately the tax take of the exchequer. So if certain outcomes were achieved, there actually was gain share, where Glasgow then secured additional funding over and above because they actually delivered. This is back to the contract. There is respective roles, responsibilities of all the different parties to the contract. So overall, the Scottish Government were putting in £500 million with match funding from the Scottish Government, and then, as I said, that risk capital skin in the game from the local authorities. And in addition to all of that funding that was very much targeted at capital programmes, there was a complementary labour and skills programme in terms of actually facilitating the delivery of the jobs that were needed and the skills for the jobs rolling from each of the different projects there, particularly in terms of the innovation projects. Then in terms of the Edinburgh deal, which was signed 4 years later, again, it was £1 billion, with a population of the economic geography just over 1 million. But the funding was flowing not over 30 years, but 15 years. And it was direct funding to projects, which is similar to the Belfast Region City Deal that I'm now going to talk about. But in terms of funding, just to illustrate again, the UK government put in 300 million match funding from the Scottish Government, and then there was 400 million came from the universities. The universities were heavily involved in the Edinburgh deal. So again, also there was a labour and skills programme in terms of actually providing the skills to ensure that when those jobs were created, the skills were there and it would drive the growth. Really, really important to have that complementary skills employability programme. So in terms of now turning our attention to the Belfast Region City Deal, it's not solely focused just on the city, it's the Belfast region, and that covers more than half the population of Northern Ireland, right out to Mid and East Antrim and down to Newry, Mourne and Down. So it's a significant scale. And that region delivers currently just under 25 billion in terms of gross value added to economic impact to the region. However, the focus of the deal is very much at looking at the barriers to growth right across that region. For example, productivity is 13% below the UK average. And we all know, we've heard many times, the UK productivity does not stack in terms of top of the league tables elsewhere across Europe and beyond. And to be actually then at a UK level at the bottom of the table does not bode well. So we really need to look at how we can boost, increase our productivity. Also across the Belfast region, 65% of the most deprived wards reside within that economic geography. And that's why it's so important that we look at what interventions, what projects are going to assist, drive growth that is inclusive, that no one, as I said, is left behind. Also, there's 19% of the citizens, communities, the residents don't have qualifications. Really starks that. And then another one in terms of the economic activity, just under 30%. So you can see the huge challenges. And it's with all of these challenges that the Belfast Region City Deal had to look at actually, how are we going to address them? What programs are actually really going to shift the dial in respect of all of these stats that don't make good reading? So in terms of the Belfast Region City Deal itself, at the heart of it, there is true collaboration across all of the Belfast Region City partners, which involve 6 of the local councils that you will have seen on the economic geography map I've just shared, both of our great local universities, and also our further and higher education colleges. And then a very important part of that then is industry as well, because we all know and hear often about the knowledge economy and the great ambition we have and the opportunities that lie ahead, particularly to retain our talent here in Northern Ireland as well. So collaboration is vital, because without that genuine collaboration and partnership working, the deal would not have advanced to its current stage. It would be nowhere near the stage it's currently at. And that's something I cannot emphasize enough, is the importance of that collaboration. Collaboration is very much the future. So in terms then of the actual ambition, the Belfast Region City Deal aims to deliver its ambitions for inclusive growth through 4 pillars of investment. That is namely the innovation in digital, tourism and regeneration, infrastructure, and employability and skills. And there's a huge focus, particularly on innovation and digital, in which we can, here in Belfast and the Belfast region, become genuinely world-class in all of those high-growth sectors. Really, really important. Also, the Belfast Region City Deal partners have recognised the long-term opportunity in continuing to support the development of our tourism industry. We could see the great strides made ourselves. It was very visible, particularly around the city, in terms of the number of international tourists, which prior to the pandemic was projected to go to the next level. And we want to return to that, but it's going to take time and it's going to take longer. So we need to continue to champion the need for investment that is really capable of help regenerate our cities and indeed towns. Also, infrastructure, as I said, connecting people to opportunity. We all know the geography of Northern Ireland. We need those transport links to actually connect individuals to the opportunity, because not everyone is going to be residing even after the pandemic and working from home. People will be going to the workplace. And then also having that complementary employability and skills programme. So in terms of particularly the innovation projects, the Belfast Region City Deal partners are developing an integrated innovation and digital investment programme, which targets over 350 million of government investment towards those resilient high growth sectors that I've mentioned, the health and life sciences, advanced manufacturing, and the digital and creative industries. And here what you have is the programme of investment that will create, there's 5 different centres of excellence, underpinned by the common thread of digital and data-driven innovation, which will ultimately support the delivery of more and better jobs that I mentioned earlier, and that increased productivity. These investments are critical in tackling the productivity gap and will be essential if we are to sustain jobs in many of our current major employers, attract investment into the high-value R&D sectors of existing businesses, and grow particularly our Indigenous small to medium-sized enterprises within those high-growth sectors that have proved to be the most resilient to the impact of the pandemic, particularly in recent months. So you can see there, particularly one to call out is the Advanced Manufacturing Innovation Centre in terms of the factory of the future. Also, the Global Innovation Institute. We all know the great success down at ESIT and CSIT that have been championed by Queen's over the last decade. We want to really take that now to the next level. And also then the Institute of Research Excellence for Advanced Clinical Healthcare, fantastic project that will be based here in the city, one of the sites being at Belfast City Hospital. So there's some really and truly game-changing innovative projects that will attract more people and to the city, people coming back home, perhaps pursue a new a new career or settle with their young families, but also retain the talent here. And that's what we want. We want this vibrant city that is able to compete on the global stage. Then in terms of the actual other strand of the digital pillar, the innovation centres I've just highlighted will be underpinned by the targeted investment in the region's digital capability, providing challenge funds for businesses to actually put solutions forward to when addressing some of the big challenges that we have, to support our also SMEs in their digital innovation journey, and a smart district to demonstrate our digital innovation capability. They will also deliver a programme of regional hubs and test beds across the Belfast region. As I said, it's not just focused on Belfast city centre, Belfast city core, it's right across that Belfast region to spread the digital innovation capability and also provide infrastructure enabling funds that will allow that next generation of digital capability to be deployed at pace, because that's what's really important, is a pace to support the ambitions of the deal. Then just turning to tourism and regeneration. Tourism, as we know in Northern Ireland, as I said, has demonstrated significant and sustained growth over the last decade. So within the Belfast Region City Deal in 2019, it was estimated that the industry supported more than 40,000 jobs and attracted more than 650 million of investment in an expenditure on overnight trips, as well as the direct economic benefits. The complex supply chain associated with the tourism industry that many of you are involved in also drives significant and direct social and economic benefit. We know the tourism industry has taken a serious hit due to COVID, and it is vital that this industry is not only able to recover, must thrive in the post-COVID world. The timing of the Belfast Region City Deal investment in tourism, I believe, it aligns strongly with the need to provide globally visible tourism products to aid the travel recovery, to actually have that tourism product ready when the travel picks up again in 2-3 years' time. It's important that we have that product. So in addition to reimagine our town and city centres into multifunctional businesses and social centres that encourage the people to live, shop, work, use services locally and spend leisure time, the convening places that we want the city to be, that will allow you all to bounce back from the devastating impact that we've all seen. So overall, the programme of investment in both the tourism and regeneration aims to create a regional, sustainable, year-round tourism product that will stand out on that global stage and breathe new life into Belfast and indeed the surrounding towns. And the City Deal itself will invest in over 200 million in world-class visitor attractions, helping regenerate our high streets as well and encourage those visitors to stay for longer. I'm just going to ask Damien Martin now to give a very quick insight into the destination hub, because that is one of the significant tourism and regeneration projects, particularly for Belfast City, that I know many of you will be interested. So if we can just ask Damien just to give a few words in terms of the destination hub.
Yeah, I'll be very brief, but the destination hub, city centre, major new attraction, about £100 million, 35 million to be invested by Belfast City Council, the remainder coming from the Belfast Region City Deal. The idea, core, same as others, we're seeking to get people to hold them in the city centre, stay longer, spend more overnight stays. And the idea at the core of it is Belfast stories, the stories of the city, the stories of its people, challenging elements, but partly what we're known for, stories of its history, but also then integrate into that a major new multi-screen cultural film centre so that we're drawing people in, keeping them there. But just to give you that concept of the stories, it's not just about what's in the building, using, for example, virtual reality as well as real exhibits, but also the idea of connecting through the building, rooftop capability to look across the city to see the components of the city and link back into those stories. So obviously at the heart of it, that model for our towns and city centres, that new capability to hold people that want to be there, creating destinations. So major long-term investment replicated, for example, by some of the other tourism and regeneration projects across the region.
Thanks, Damien. So in terms of having put the spotlight on the digital innovation, the tourism and regen, we'll now turn our attention to infrastructure, something very close to my heart, having been involved in infrastructure advisory over the last 2 decades. So in terms of the Belfast Region City Deal, there's 3 key infrastructure projects that will significantly enhance access to the great jobs that are being created and deliver wider benefits to local communities through improved access to services. And 2 of the 3 significant infrastructure projects that underpin the Belfast Region City Deal that actually are in Belfast. They're namely, firstly, phase 2 of the Belfast Rapid Transit System. We all know in terms of what that has done in terms of east-west, west-east in the city, but now to actually finish that in terms of north-south parts of the city, because that would extend connectivity with employment centres in North Belfast, Newton Abbey, and indeed the neighbouring Lisburn and Castlereagh council areas, and provide low-cost access to the great education facilities that we have, and also our healthcare, and indeed, as I said, the employment centres. Also in Belfast then, in terms of looking to the actual trying to get us all out of our cars and into that walking and cycling, is a lagging pedestrian and cycle bridge here in Belfast as well. So again, two really good projects in terms of actually specifically Belfast city centre. The third project is actually a roads project in terms of the Newry Southern Release Road, which aims to provide that kind of strategic transport link between the Belfast, Dublin, the Eastern Economic Corridor, and indeed also connecting in terms of the second largest port in Northern Ireland, Warren Point. But particularly in terms of Belfast, that the City Deal will assist with the delivery of the next phase of Belfast Rapid Transit, and then indeed that pedestrian and cycle bridge. So then on the final pillar that I'll turn to, it's the employability and skills that I previously mentioned. In terms of all the City Deals have a complementary employment and skills programme to complement the actual capital projects that are being taken forward. So in terms of the digital and innovation projects that are going to stimulate growth within the high value sectors, to fully realise that ambition, we need to foster the skills required to meet those sectors' needs. So that's going to involve the provision of more accessible entry points to those sectors, and that's really important if we're serious about that inclusive growth, and also recognising the criticality of those skills and capabilities at all levels of employment. And the City Deal partners also understand the fundamental challenge that the pandemic has created and need to focus plans on those impacted by the continuing job losses, sadly, and the restrictions on employment. So it's really, really important that the City Deal does address those issues. And again, aligning the range of skills and employability programmes that the partners, the FE colleges particularly, will deliver, including also the universities and the councils, with the needs of industry, because that is such a vital component of delivering the ambitions and the benefits of the overall City Deal investment. So the partners have therefore committed to aligning 30 million of their existing resources, this is local government and FE colleges, to maximise the impact of the City Deal programme, and they're working closely with central government partners and the universities to ensure that those plans are strongly integrated with the new skills strategy in Northern Ireland and also NI-wide employability programmes. And in terms of the actual employability and skills programme itself, it's built around 4 really key themes: skills for growth, the skills for inclusion, and I don't apologise for emphasising the inclusion element, and also skills for that digital future, because that is the reality. The new reality is the future is digital. So then turning to the actual funding, the actual City Deal programme funding, finance itself. You may often see the Belfast Region City Deal referred to as a £1 billion programme, and you might be immediately wondering, looking at the figures listed in the slide ahead of you, that they sum to 850 million. But let me explain. It's the private sector leverage. The UK government committed 350 million when the Chancellor announced back in October 18, which was reaffirmed then in the heads of terms that were signed for the City Deal in March 2019. But it's also important to note that in addition to the match funding from the Northern Ireland Executive, which obviously only could be confirmed whenever they actually returned. So the Northern Ireland Executive money was just confirmed, announced back in May of last year. But the real important money, and this is where it's first, is the 150 million that's going in from our councils and universities. Our local government having real skin in the game, risk capital, because one important point to note in terms of all of those investment pillars and all the projects that underpin SAME, they will be delivered over a 10-year period. However, the money coming from UK and NI government will flow over a 15-year period. So there's a cost of carry there, and that's where our council is really, really important, that actually they deliver the projects and the benefits are derived, and then that they will be able to pay back any of that risk capital that they have to take in the early days of the projects that will be delivered in the initial phases. So then in terms of the overall timeline, as Simon alluded to at the start, myself and others have been involved along the journey of the Belfast Region City Deal, and it was back, believe it or not, in May 2017 when a feasibility study was first initiated to actually look at the merits of securing a city deal for Belfast and the wider Belfast region. And that was successful in getting the Chancellor's commitment later that year in November 2017, followed by then a very compelling proposition of asks and offers to the UK government in September 2018. And within a matter of weeks, the Chancellor announcing the 350 million. And as I said, then the heads of terms being signed with the UK government in March 2019. And since March 2019, there's been an absolute immense effort and collaborative working across all of the Belfast Region City Deal partners, the 2 universities, the 6 local councils, and indeed the FE colleges to reach its current stage. Because despite the pandemic and many challenges faced, they endeavoured to keep up that momentum. And it's vital that that momentum is now maintained to ensure that the deal is agreed and signed later this year as well. Because as I said, the funding at the start, in terms of the funding, will not flow from UK government and our own devolved government until that deal is signed. Because what the City Deal partners want to do is to commence the delivery of those most advanced projects, the projects now that have OBCs, that are in a state of readiness and have been reviewed and approved by the various different departmental stakeholders that underpin those projects and taken forward. So in terms of, despite the times we find ourselves in, hopefully you can see that the huge opportunity that the Belfast Region City Deal presents, particularly for the city, in terms of really catapulting those resilient, high growth sectors into the future, but also in terms of what's important to our local economy in terms of our tourism and regen as well, because that's going to be so important as we look to reimagine our Belfast city centre and in the new reality that we are in. And for me, I do hope the last 20 minutes have provided you, I've gone over just with some of the insights to the deal. It would take much longer to do a deep dive in individual projects, but it's the important role it will play as well. And I certainly want to see more cranes in the Belfast skyline in the next couple of years. So thank you for your time, and I'll now hand back to Simon to chair the Q&A session. Thank you.
Ashleen, thank you very much for that. That was absolutely fascinating, and I think you used the word demystifying yourself at the beginning, and hopefully that has helped to unpack precisely what is included in our city deal and its origins and how it will work. I think what struck me is just the sort of sheer scale of ambition within the project. I mean, £1 billion is a lot of money, but it's also a huge amount of areas in which this is going to touch. And this is maybe one to kick off just for Damien, actually. So we're joined by Damien Martin, who you heard earlier, who is the Programme Director for the Belfast Region City Deal. And Damien, obviously it's pretty complex as well because of that scale, and Ashleen sort of talk about, you know, the range of difficulties in bringing this forward, and it's noticeable that we're, I suppose, a little bit later to this than places like Glasgow and Manchester and so forth, but it does look like our timeline is roughly the same. So are we very much on target, Damien, for getting these projects signed off? We're in that sort of almost a slightly dark period at the moment where, you know, we're we've had an announcement, work hasn't started, things are going through various processes, but is that all going well?
Yeah, and to be fair, it's been tough bringing a program of this scale forward with a number of partners in this environment. And I think, as I said to you the other day, the big first element with our politicians returning was making sure the Northern Ireland side of the deal came alongside, which was why it was huge to get that announcement in May. But actually, and I suppose if you'd asked me September or October, I might have been feeling, oh my goodness, are we going to get to where we need to? But by Christmas, we managed to get business cases, some were program business case, most outline business cases for all the projects developed. And that's the fundamental to the deal. So not everything has to be approved in one go, but what you require is the ability to do a deal, which means understanding the finances, the implementation plan, the delivery, all of that. So by Christmas, we managed to have business cases for all of those developed. So we're now in the position that they start to go through the system. Some will take some considerable time to get approved. Others we really hope will be approved in the next couple of months because they're very well developed. And obviously there are a couple of categories of those that are most well developed and those that are, how would you say, maybe most simple, like for example, the Lagan Bridge project. You know, it's one of those, get it done, money out the door, we know what it's for, let's get momentum behind it. We know it's going to be tough. I think we've made a lot of progress with our government partners in understanding this idea of a phased deal. So our aim is that we're going to have a draft deal document by the end of March, come hell or high water. And I guess the key challenge will then be getting all those partners lined up and agreed to sign that. Because the key point, as Ashleen said, the money doesn't get out the door until you sign the deal document. Even development costs at the moment are all borne by partners. So to access that government money, we require that deal document.
And Ashleen, you mentioned that KPMG has been involved in quite a few of these across the UK, and obviously that gives you a degree of experience, but also the ability to compare. And does it look like Belfast, obviously, as we said, a little bit further behind those others, but that means you can learn things. And you mentioned just how fantastic the redevelopment of some of those particularly northern English cities and are there lessons that we can learn? We're not, have we been able to look at those examples, adapt, change, modify accordingly in order to maximize the benefit of these deals? Because obviously the first ones were real pioneers. We have that benefit of knowing and understanding how a deal works.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Simon. When there's been rich learnings from some of those early days, and it's been great, in terms of particularly the Belfast Region City Deal partners, that they have kept in regular contact with some of the Scottish deals, particularly Edinburgh, one to note, and also Cardiff. So there is that, what I call city deal community, where they do learn. But we all know this is Northern Ireland and Belfast. We have our own unique challenges. So, there is a lot of what I would call bespoke aspects to our deal. But what's really, really important in this to ensure delivery, it is the actual governance arrangements that are going to be put in place and ensuring that there is the actual capacity across our local government, because it's been extraordinary. I commend them taking it to this level, having the ambition and being bold and brave to do this in challenging times. 3 years ago, at a point where we didn't have an executive, they pushed on because they could see that potential ultimate prize. It was too good an opportunity not to take it forward. So I think the key thing now will be ensuring that we give our local governments and those partners the resources they need in terms of human capital to ensure that we deliver, because that's what matters.
Yeah. And Damien, there's a question from Roisin McCaskey at the FSB, and I think it's quite a good one, relevant. We don't want to dwell on the pandemic, but she asked a very good question, relevant question around, the impact of COVID-19 on the city deal and how it potentially changes the face of cities and town centres. Is there anything that is needed to be reconsidered, or in truth, is this exactly what, in your view, the city needs to get through the challenges that have been presented by the pandemic?
And back in that period, how do you say, April, May, June, we did have to take a bit of a stop and a relook and say, does this all still make sense? Do some things need to be changed? And I guess the conclusion we came to, for example, around some of our planned investments in innovation and digital, was that if we hadn't have come up with them before, we'd now be coming up with them, given, I suppose, what has really been demonstrated, that fast tracking of the importance of all of this. But in many respects, we knew that already. It's just the pace of change. And then actually in tourism and regeneration, and we really did have to think about this, but the nature of this was, medium, long-term, transformational, and we know we require attractions to keep people. Even if we look just the island of Ireland, people are coming here on day trips to Northern Ireland. When you go to Killarney, you don't go on a day trip, you go for 3 or 4 days. So we know there are real opportunities. And so that review, we did look at it and say we had to take stock, particularly in tourism and regeneration. But we think that's what we need. And we also fundamentally, I suppose, it has reinforced again the speed, the scale, and challenge to town and city centres and the need for government. And I think government has to step up in this, because it's not going to be possible for the private sector to do this on its own, which is that we need our town and city centres as destinations. And then we need attractions to hold and draw people to those destinations. So we believe, in a way, it challenged us, but in some respects, it's reinforced the need for the sort of investments that we're making.
Thanks, Damien. We've got a good few questions have come in. Thanks for those. We'll try to get through as many as we can in the next 10 minutes. If we don't worry, we'll endeavour to get those answered afterwards and contact you all individually with those responses. And Ashleen, Damien said something there which I think is interesting. Obviously, we're coming through a very difficult economic period, but and the city deal wasn't envisaged as a recovery plan as such. But I often think that if you had a blank sheet of paper and you had £1 billion to spend on recovery, these are almost exactly the sort of projects that you would do. And you talked about those innovation centres, and it's maybe worth just dwelling on those. And you mentioned used the phrase world class, and it was taking part in a series that Wilson Nesbitt, the law firm, and the city are doing called World Class Belfast. And those are the sectors that have been focused on around creative industries and healthcare, and that we can excel in, and that we can be world class in. And is that has that been something that elsewhere cities have focused on, where they're really strong at? And how do you see Belfast actually benefiting from those pieces of infrastructure that will go in around those sectors?
It's back to each of the city deals that have been taken forward. They've focused on the strengths of their regions. That is vital, because there's no point in trying to compete with others. So you are handpicking. We know the story about cyber and fintech, etc., to name a few, here in Northern Ireland, and that's why there's been that focus as well. And what I would say is, if we're serious about creating rich opportunities for our young people to retain that talent in Northern Ireland, and I talk about attracting the talent back, those people that I know personally in my own friends network that have come back and said, hey, you know what, Belfast's not a bad place, actually. I don't need to be in London with my family. So, we have to create those opportunities if we really want to retain the talent, but also attract talent back. It's vital we do that. And it's how we're going to stand out on the global stage, is actually doing those extraordinary things. So it's vital. And what I would add is, it was the innovation and digital proposition that secured that additional funding, the 350 million from the UK government. So if you did not have a compelling proposition that was aligned with the UK industrial strategy, you did not stand a chance of actually getting a city deal. And I would also add, as we all now look to the economic recovery, and indeed the executive's economic recovery plans, the City, Region and Growth Deals programme right across Northern Ireland, because the 4 deals I mentioned earlier, they cover the entirety of Northern Ireland now. They are a vital part of the recovery. They have a really key role to play. So I think the key thing now is that momentum to ensure we get the deal documents signed, the funding flow, so we can deliver and actually enjoy those benefits.
Yeah. Thanks, Ashleen. Damien, we've mentioned sustainability and the environment a couple of times during this morning, and Simon Bell from HLM Architects has asked about, how can we ensure that there are, genuinely, truly sustainable outcomes, both locally and globally, in terms of these projects, and to ensure that that they are playing their part as well in tackling climate change and what that's going to mean for the city in the years ahead.
Yeah, well, the first thing I would say is, obviously part of what we've built in terms of, and this will be in the deal document, is the expectations on all the partners in designing and developing these, that they are really looking at how do we contribute to the zero carbon and climate change goals. So as we develop new things and, for example, new investments in some of those centres of excellence, how are they designed, how are they built? We're also a major component of the digital programme is specifically focused, how do we enable new technologies, whether they're smart technologies around, for example, zero carbon, low energy, systems and mechanisms for distributing energy in efficient ways. How could we, for example, within a smart district in Belfast or a test bed in Mid and East Antrim, how could we enable that as we regenerate a site or new investments? I think the other element, I have to say, I think probably in terms of looking forward, because the idea of the city deal is this is the start. And so, for example, people be aware there's a commitment of a further £100 million for a complementary fund. And I think all the partners, we haven't worked out the detail, have also recognised that sustainability component is something that we need to build. It's also clearly built into significantly the idea of Belfast Rapid Transit. And again, there are the opportunities for that, not just to be as good as the other version, but to look at, again, next generation technologies there. And then on the smaller scale, there's no doubt that opportunity to walk and cycle. I think all of us now know the value of that, if only for our well-being. And there really are opportunities without massive investments to make quite significant changes. So I think, to be fair, it's one of those areas where there's more to be done. But we're trying very hard to make sure it's integrated and then look at how we strengthen it going forward.
Yeah, I'm doing my best to embrace active travel. I think after this event, I'll walk from my desk to the kitchen, and that'll do me for this morning. There's a few questions, Damien, there, and I appreciate you have to go around 11 o'clock, and we're trying to wrap up for then anyway. But there's a couple there about which are just maybe bind a few of them together, including one from Daniel Jackson of Cornerstone, the development company in the city, around that interface between these projects and bureaucracy and the system and things like planning and so forth. Is there, obviously everything has to go through its process, but is there anything in terms of just because of all of those stakeholders, and it's so important everybody's bought into it, that projects are getting a fair wind? And I don't, I mean that in the sense of, obviously it has to go through all of the appropriate processes, but clearly the city is and government is backing these schemes. So, one would hope that would mean that it wouldn't get too bureaucratic as they would move from this phase of sign off to delivery. I ask optimistically.
Will I answer optimistically as well? Some are transformational in nature, and we all know what that means. That create, so for example, some of the tourism projects, you're trying to do something really significant that creates risks and challenges. I suppose what we've been trying to do really hard through all the engagement is to get in early, to talk to people, to make them aware of what we're trying to achieve. So, and at project level, there's huge levels of engagement going on with key stakeholders and partners. So, I think we all live in the real world. Ashleen mentioned it. We know we have challenges in delivery. And I guess what we're trying to do is get all that engagement. And I know, for example, in the Belfast context, lots of discussions with planners at early stage about what this might be, where this might be involved. Many things, how do you say, are tied down in terms of likely sites and such, like others actually aren't yet. That, there's more work, partly for the reason, there's some big costs coming up around sites and other things, and we need to get the commitment to the deal before partners will invest that.
Thanks, Damien. Ashleen, obviously this is it's interesting, it's striking, and that it is a Belfast Region City Deal and not just for the city. And whilst Belfast, obviously, and we're very keen at Belfast Chamber to emphasise this point, is the economic driver for not just for that immediate city region, but the entirety of Northern Ireland. Obviously, that's something that has been done elsewhere, and that's something that, you know, is maybe, it's slightly different, and it's not unique. Obviously, globally, it's not unique now within the UK because of other city deals, but those councils coming together to work together. How key is that to success, and how have cities then embraced that sort of partnership? Cities who have already had city deals in place, how have they embraced that partnership to continue to work beyond their initial city deal?
You know, it's a very good question, Simon. I mean, first of all, it's just recognising that they need to work together to get the deal, the point I made earlier. But it's also in the context of that there's rules in terms of, I talked about, it's a different approach taken. It's a program level approach. It's not just individual projects. So you have to set rules at the outset. You know, what do we want to achieve in terms of economic impact, social outcomes, the inclusive growth that I often talk about. So those rules are all agreed up front. And that takes, and that took a lot of time, to be fair to all, particularly our local government stakeholders. You know, Damien's smiling there, I see, in terms of, it wasn't easy. There was bumps along the way, but everyone came back to, you know, focused on that ultimate prize that I talked about, that we really need, you know, to stick with it. And there was compromise throughout. There had to be, but it was always ensuring that there was that spread, you know, that there wasn't one stakeholder benefiting more than the other. You always had to stand back, and that was the role that KPMG played in terms of being that independent, objective facilitator, broker, Damien, in terms of actually when the tough but the right decisions had to be made. There was that independent, objective analysis, and obviously affordability as well was always the challenge. But seeing the benefit of pooling resource, that actually what that would do, and then leverage it. The private investment leverage is really important in this, because there's been so much time and cost on the part of local government going into this, that we need to ensure we leverage the private investment, because that, again, it's part of the ultimate prize I talked about earlier. So it's not for the faint-hearted, is what I would say, as well. But certainly, no, I think, again, I commend our local government in terms of actually having the confidence and the tenacity to stick with it to get us to this stage.
Thanks, Ashleen. There's been a question there, Damien, about, you know, engaging with SME. So, I mean, we're very, very happy if there's anyone who is listening who is interested in engaging a little bit more to feed that through to yourself, because there will be perhaps opportunities, not that the importance of partnership and ensuring that the local businesses benefit as much as possible is, I think, is key to success. Can I just then, just in conclusion, and thank both Ashleen and Damien on all of our behalves. They're very, very busy people, as we have just heard, and we're really grateful for them taking the time out of their schedules to be with us this morning. So Ashleen and Damien, on behalf of all of us, thank you very much for not just for your time this morning, but everything that you're trying to do with the city deal to transform the economy of Belfast and beyond. It's really appreciated. Can I also thank Power NI for their partnership and support to help deliver this series of events. The third in our series is next Friday, so please go along to our website and register for that if you haven't already. That's going to focus on another huge piece of investment that keep coming sort of thick and fast in the city, and it's the transport hub and Weavers Cross, and also TransLink's sustainability plans as well, and that will be delivered by Chris Conway, the chief executive at TransLink. So please register for that, and hope that you can join us next Friday for that as well. A few people have asked about slides in the presentation. We will share that afterwards if Ashleen's okay with that, and we'll also send a copy of a link to our YouTube channel where you can share the video with colleagues who maybe haven't been able to make it along this morning. Can I also thank Neil at ND Events for helping to deliver this morning, and can I thank just lastly then all of you for joining us this morning. You're all very welcome, and as I said before, hope to see you at future, well, if not literally see you, hope that you are able to attend future events in this series and others that Belfast Chamber are hosting in the weeks ahead. So again, just thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance today, and I hope you all have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.